At my sister's wedding, she mocked me for showing up with my fatherless child, and my mother joined in, insulting us and telling me to have my son clean the tables. Everyone laughed at us, but when my son took the mic and said, "I have a surprise for the bride," what he revealed left everyone in the room frozen in shock. I, 34F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Elaine, 31F. Growing up, she was my parents' golden child, the pretty one, the smart one, the one who always did everything right. I, on the other hand, was constantly scrutinized and criticized, especially by our mother. 10 years ago, I got pregnant after a brief relationship with a man named James. When I told him about the pregnancy, he panicked and disappeared. I made the decision to raise my son, Noah, on my own, and it's been the best decision of my life. Noah is now 9 years old, kind, brilliant, and the light of my world. When Noah was born, my family, particularly my mother and sister, made their disapproval abundantly clear. They called me irresponsible, said I had ruined my life, and constantly referred to Noah as my mistake. Over the years, I've limited contact with them, only seeing them at major family gatherings where I could keep the interactions brief. Last month, Elaine got married to her fiancé, Marcus. Despite our strained relationship, she invited me to the wedding. I suspected it was more out of obligation than genuine desire to have me there, but I decided to accept the invitation. Noah was included in the invitation, which surprised me, but I thought perhaps this was an olive branch, a chance to mend our relationship. How wrong I was. The wedding day. The ceremony was beautiful, held at an upscale vineyard with stunning views. Noah was on his best behavior, dressed in a little suit I had saved up to buy him. He was excited about attending his first wedding, especially his aunt's. I was proud of how mature he was being. During the reception, I was seated at the family table, which was at least something. Elaine looked gorgeous in her designer gown, and our mother was fawning over her as usual. I congratulated Elaine, and she gave me a cold smile before turning away to chat with her college friends. Things started to go downhill when Noah accidentally spilled a bit of his water on the tablecloth. It was a minor spill that I quickly cleaned up, but my mother noticed and clicked her tongue disapprovingly. "This is why children don't belong at elegant events," she said loudly. I ignored her comment and continued enjoying the meal with Noah, who was now being extra careful with his glass. When dinner was over, Elaine made her way to our table with her new husband. I thought she was coming to thank us for attending, but instead, she looked down at Noah and said, "How's my fatherless nephew enjoying his first fancy dinner? Probably not used to cloth napkins, are you?" Noah's face fell, and I felt my blood begin to boil. "Elaine, that's inappropriate," I said quietly, not wanting to cause a scene. She laughed and nudged Marcus. "Oh, lighten up. It's my wedding day, I can say what I want." My mother joined in. "Well, he could at least make himself useful. The catering staff is short-handed. Noah, why don't you help clear some of these tables? It might teach you some responsibility, something your mother clearly couldn't." Several people at nearby tables chuckled, and I saw Noah's eyes fill with tears. I was about to grab him and leave when an old friend of my father's, Uncle Robert, not a real uncle, but my dad's best friend from college, who was sitting at our table, stood up. "That's enough," he said firmly. "The boy has done nothing wrong, and you should be ashamed of yourselves." Elaine rolled her eyes. "Oh please, Robert. Mind your own business. It's just a bit of fun." "At a child's expense?" he replied, then turned to me. "Jessica, you and Noah deserve better than this treatment." I was grateful for his intervention, but the damage had been done. Noah was humiliated, and I was ready to leave. I whispered to him that we could go if he wanted to. The revelation. But Noah surprised me. He squared his little shoulders and whispered back, "No, Mom. I want to give Aunt Elaine my gift." Before the wedding, Noah had insisted on getting something special for his aunt. He'd been saving his allowance for months and had purchased a small silver photo frame, which we had filled with a childhood photo of Elaine and me that I had kept. He'd been so excited about it, saying that maybe it would help his aunt remember when she used to be nice to me. I hesitated, not wanting him to face more ridicule, but there was a determination in his eyes I couldn't deny. So I nodded, and he picked up the gift bag from under his chair. The DJ was announcing that it was time for toasts, and the best man and maid of honor had already given theirs. There was a slight lull, and Noah saw his opportunity. Before I could stop him, he walked up to the area where the microphone stood. The DJ, seeing a small boy approach, smiled and lowered the microphone for him. A few guests chuckled, assuming this was part of the program, a cute nephew saying something sweet about the bride. Noah took the microphone, his hands trembling slightly. "Hi, I'm Noah, Aunt Elaine's nephew." His voice was small but clear in the large reception hall. Elaine's smile was fixed and false as she watched him, probably expecting a brief, childish speech that she could laugh off. "I know I'm not supposed to be here, Noah continued, because I don't have a dad and that makes me and my mom not good enough for this family. A hush fell over the room. I half rose from my seat, worried about what might come next, but Uncle Robert placed a gentle hand on my arm, holding me back. But I have a surprise for Aunt Elaine, Noah said, his voice growing stronger. I wanted to give you this gift. He held up the bag, and one of the groomsmen, looking uncomfortable, took it to Elaine. She opened it with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's a picture of you and my mom when you were friends, Noah explained. But that's not the surprise. Elaine looked at the photo, and I saw a flicker of something, perhaps guilt, cross her face. The surprise is about my dad, Noah continued. The dad everyone says I don't have. At this point, I was completely confused. Noah had never expressed interest in finding James, and we rarely discussed him. 3 months ago, Noah said, I found some old letters in Mom's memory box. She didn't know I saw them, but I did. They were from my dad. I froze. He was talking about a stack of letters James had sent me after he left, letters apologizing, explaining his panic, his immaturity, his eventual realization that he had made a terrible mistake. Letters I had kept but never responded to, too hurt by his initial abandonment. My dad wrote to my mom many times, Noah continued. He wanted to meet me, but Mom never wrote back because she was protecting me. She thought he might hurt me and leave again. I felt tears welling in my eyes. I had never told Noah about those letters, thinking I was shielding him from potential disappointment. So I did something, Noah said, his voice now steady and clear. I wrote to my dad. I found his address on the letters and sent him a letter. And guess what? He wrote back. We've been writing to each other for months. The room was absolutely silent now. Even the servers had stopped moving. My dad didn't know about me until Mom told him. He was scared and ran away, and that was wrong. But he tried to come back, and he's been trying for years. And now he wants to meet me. He's a good person who made a mistake. Noah paused, then looked directly at Elaine and my mother. And the biggest surprise of all? My dad is here today. A collective gasp went through the room. I scanned the guests in confusion, wondering if James had somehow crashed the wedding. Noah pointed to a man standing at the back of the reception hall, a man I hadn't noticed before, partially hidden by a decorative column. As he stepped forward, I recognized him immediately, despite the decade that had passed. James looked older, more mature, but his eyes were the same, and they were fixed on Noah with an expression of pure love. That's my dad, Noah said proudly. He came because I asked him to. Because I wanted him to meet my family. Even the ones who are mean to me. The microphone slipped a little in Noah's hand, and he adjusted his grip. So when you call me fatherless and laugh at me, you're wrong. I have a dad. He's right there. And he loves me, even though he's never met me. And that's more than you do, even though you've known me my whole life. With that, Noah carefully placed the microphone back on its stand and walked toward James, who knelt down to meet him at eye level. The entire room watched as father and son looked at each other face to face for the first time. I stood up, my legs shaking, and made my way toward them, aware of every eye in the room on me. Elaine's voice cut through the silence. You planned this, she hissed at me as I passed her table. You planned this to ruin my wedding. I paused and looked at my sister, really looked at her. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the ugliness of her expression, the pettiness that had consumed her over the years. No, Elaine, I said quietly. I had no idea. This is all Noah. He did this on his own because he wanted a chance to know his father, and because he hoped, somehow, that it might make you and Mom see him as a person, not a mistake. I continued walking toward Noah and James, leaving Elaine stunned into silence. The aftermath. When I reached them, James stood up. Jessica, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry. For everything. I didn't know what to say. 10 years of anger, hurt, and protection for my son warred with the undeniable fact that Noah had sought out his father, and James had responded with love. How did you get invited to the wedding? I finally asked. James looked uncomfortable. I wasn't, exactly. Noah told me about it in his letters. I've been staying at a hotel nearby, hoping to see you both after the reception. But then Noah texted me, you gave him a phone for emergencies, right? And told me to come now. He said he needed me. So I did. I looked down at my son, who met my gaze steadily. You texted him from the bathroom when you said you weren't feeling well? Noah nodded. I heard what Aunt Elaine and Grandma said. I wanted to show them they were wrong about me. About us. The sheer courage and resourcefulness of my child left me speechless. A throat cleared behind us, and I turned to see Uncle Robert. I think the three of you might want some privacy, he said kindly. There's a small parlor off the main hall that should be empty. We followed him out of the reception hall, leaving behind a room still frozen in shock. As we left, I glanced back at Elaine, standing in her perfect white dress beside her new husband, her face a mask of fury and embarrassment. In the parlor, Noah, James, and I talked for hours. James explained how he had panicked at the news of becoming a father, how his own father had abandoned his family, and how terrified he was of repeating that pattern. He told us about the years of therapy he'd undergone, the stable career he'd built, and how he had never stopped regretting his decision to leave. I explained why I hadn't responded to his letters, my fear of letting him into Noah's life only to have him leave again, my determination to protect our son from experiencing that rejection firsthand. And Noah, my amazing, resilient son, told us both how he had discovered the letters, how he had struggled with whether to reach out to James, and how ultimately, he had decided he wanted the chance to know his father. As the evening wore on, we began to sketch the outlines of a new relationship, not a romantic one between James and me, but a co-parenting arrangement that would allow Noah to have his father in his life. The next day, the next morning, my phone exploded with texts and calls, from Elaine, my mother, various relatives and wedding guests. I ignored them all. Instead, James, Noah, and I went to breakfast at a small cafe near our hotel. As we ate, Noah looked happier than I had seen him in a long time. James and I were cautious with each other, navigating this new territory carefully, but there was a sense of possibility that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. My phone buzzed again with a text from my mother. "You've humiliated your sister on her wedding day. I hope you're satisfied. Don't expect to be welcome in this family after this." I showed the text to James, who frowned. "They're blaming you for what happened?" "They always do," I said with a sad smile. He looked at Noah, who was happily demolishing a stack of pancakes, then back at me. "Well, they're wrong. You've raised an incredible kid, Jessica. All by yourself." "Yeah," I agreed, watching Noah. "I did." My phone buzzed once more. This time it was Uncle Robert, "Proud of you and Noah. If your family can't see what they're losing, that's their problem. You've got a standing invitation to Thanksgiving at our house from now on." I smiled and put my phone away. 3 days later, a handwritten letter arrived from Elaine. I expected more accusations and anger, but instead, I found something else entirely. "Jessica, I've spent the past 3 days thinking about what happened at my wedding. My initial reaction was rage, at you, at Noah, at James for showing up. But as the dust has settled, I've been forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself, about Mom, and about how we've treated you and Noah. The things we said to Noah were cruel and inexcusable. There's no justification for adults to bully a child, and that's exactly what we did. What I did." Watching Noah stand up for himself, with such dignity and courage, made me see myself through his eyes, through the eyes of everyone at that reception. What they saw wasn't a beautiful bride having her special day ruined. They saw a mean, petty woman mocking a child. "I don't expect your forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that Noah's bravery has forced me to do some serious soul-searching about who I've become and the values I've absorbed from Mom without questioning them. Marcus and I have postponed our honeymoon. Instead, I've started therapy. I need to understand why I've been so determined to prove myself superior to you, why I've been so willing to hurt a child to do it. If, someday, you and Noah might be willing to meet with me, on your terms, in a place where you both feel safe, I would be grateful for the chance to apologize in person and begin to make amends. Your sister, Elaine." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't a perfect apology, there were still traces of Elaine's self-centeredness, but it was honest in a way she had never been with me before. I didn't know if reconciliation was possible after everything that had happened. The wounds were deep, and trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. But Noah's courage had opened a door that I had thought permanently closed. That evening, as I tucked Noah into bed, I told him about Elaine's letter. "Do you think she really means it?" he asked. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I think she's trying. And that's a start. Should we give her another chance?" He looked up at me, his eyes still holding that same determination I'd seen at the wedding. I smoothed his hair back from his forehead. "We don't have to decide that tonight. But I think people can change if they really want to. The question is whether they're willing to put in the work." Noah nodded thoughtfully. "Like Dad? He changed, right?" "Yes," I said. "I think he did. Then maybe Aunt Elaine can too." Looking at my son, so wise, so compassionate despite everything he'd been through, I felt a surge of pride so intense it took my breath away. "Maybe she can," I agreed. "And whatever happens with Aunt Elaine or Grandma or anyone else, I want you to remember something." "What?" he asked, snuggling deeper under his covers. "What you did at that wedding was one of the bravest things I've ever seen. You stood up not just for yourself, but for me too. And I am so proud to be your mom." Noah smiled, his eyelids growing heavy. And I'm proud that you're my mom. And that James is my dad. We're going to be okay, aren't we? Yes, I said, certainty filling me for the first time in a long time. We are absolutely going to be okay. As I watched him drift off to sleep, I thought about the long road that had led us here and the uncertain path ahead. There would be challenges as we navigated this new family dynamic, decisions about how much contact to allow with my mother and sister, boundaries to establish and maintain. But Noah had shown me something important at that wedding. Sometimes, the most profound act of revenge isn't about hurting those who hurt you, it's about standing in your truth, refusing to be diminished by their cruelty, and opening the door to a future they never imagined possible for you. My son had turned the tables not through malice, but through courage and hope. And in doing so, he had given all of us, himself, me, James, even Elaine, a chance at something better than revenge, redemption. In the weeks that followed, we settled into a new routine. James rented an apartment nearby so he could spend time with Noah regularly. Our co-parenting relationship was tentative at first, but grew stronger as we both focused on what was best for our son. Noah thrived with his father in his life. They discovered shared interests, both loved building model airplanes and had the same offbeat sense of humor. James attended Noah's soccer games and helped with science projects. He never tried to replace the bond Noah and I had formed over the years. Instead, he created his own unique relationship with his son. As for Elaine, I eventually agreed to meet her for coffee, just the two of us. The conversation was awkward and painful at times, but necessary. She apologized again, more thoroughly this time, and shared insights from her therapy sessions. She had begun to recognize patterns from our childhood, how our mother had always pitted us against each other, how Elaine had been rewarded for putting me down. I'm not using that as an excuse, she said, stirring her latte absently. I was an adult making my own choices. But I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could be so cruel to a child. I nodded, appreciating her honesty while still maintaining my emotional distance. It's going to take time, Elaine. A lot of time. I know, she said. I'm prepared for that. And if you decide you never want me in your lives again, I'll understand. But I hope you'll give me a chance to show you I'm changing. My mother was a different story. She remained entrenched in her position, insisting that I had deliberately sabotaged Elaine's wedding. When I received a formal letter from her threatening to pursue grandparents' rights, I consulted a lawyer who assured me that her case was weak, especially given the witnesses to her treatment of Noah at the wedding. Instead of engaging in a legal battle, I sent her a simple response: when you're ready to acknowledge how you've treated Noah and me, and to make amends as Elaine is trying to do, we can talk. Until then, please respect our space. She didn't respond. Uncle Robert and his wife became our surrogate family, hosting us for holidays and checking in regularly. Robert had been my father's best friend before Dad passed away when I was 15, and he seemed grateful for the chance to fulfill a promise he'd made to look after me. 6 months after the wedding, Noah asked if Elaine could come to his 10th birthday party. I was hesitant, but he insisted. I want to see if she really means it, he said with that same determination that continued to amaze me. And if she does, then maybe it's time to forgive her. Isn't that what you always tell me? That forgiveness is for us, not for the other person? Once again, my son was teaching me about courage and grace. Elaine came to the party, nervous and subdued. She brought a thoughtful gift, a telescope Noah had been wanting, and made an effort to talk to the other children and parents without any of her usual condescension. When Noah blew out his candles, I caught her wiping away a tear. As the guests were leaving, she approached me in the kitchen where I was packing away leftover cake. "Thank you for letting me come," she said softly. "I know you didn't have to." "It was Noah's decision," I replied. She nodded. "He's an amazing kid, Jess. You've done an incredible job with him." "Yes," I said, allowing myself a small smile. "I have." There was an awkward pause before she added, "I meant what I said in my letter. I'm doing the work. I want to be better. To be worthy of being his aunt and your sister." Looking at her, really looking at her, I could see the changes. The sharp edges were softer, the defensive pride diminished. She was trying, genuinely trying. "One day at a time," I said finally. "That's all any of us can do." As Elaine left, Noah came into the kitchen and wrapped his arms around my waist. "I think she's getting better," he said thoughtfully. "Don't you?" "I think so too," I agreed. "And we're getting better too, right? With Dad and everything?" "Definitely," I said, kissing the top of his head. Noah looked up at me with a grin. "So it all worked out. My plan at the wedding." I laughed. "I'm not sure it was a plan, exactly." "Well, maybe not at first," he admitted. "But when I heard them being mean, I just thought, what if they knew Dad was here? What if everyone knew? And then it felt like a plan." I shook my head in wonder. You're something else, you know that? He nodded confidently. I know. I get it from you. As Noah ran off to examine his birthday presents, I stood in the kitchen of our small but happy home, marveling at how much had changed in 6 months. What had begun as a day of humiliation had transformed into an unexpected journey of healing and growth. Life wasn't perfect. There were still difficult days and uncomfortable family dynamics to navigate. My relationship with my mother remained strained, and James and I were still finding our footing as co-parents. But for the first time in a decade, I felt like we were all moving forward rather than being trapped in old patterns of hurt and resentment. And it had all started with my son, my brave, compassionate, remarkable son, taking a microphone and refusing to be defined by others' cruelty. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. 1 year later, on the anniversary of Elaine's wedding, I found myself sitting on a park bench watching Noah and James fly a kite. The spring breeze caught the diamond-shaped fabric, lifting it higher into the cerulean sky as Noah squealed with delight. James glanced over at me and smiled, a smile that held friendship, mutual respect, and shared joy in our son. We had come a long way in 12 months. James had proven himself reliable and committed, never missing a scheduled visit, always communicating clearly about his plans and intentions. He'd become not just Noah's father, but my partner in raising our son, not romantically, but in all the ways that mattered for Noah's well-being. My phone buzzed with a text from Elaine, thinking of you all today. Would love to see Noah's soccer game this weekend if that's still okay? Our relationship had evolved slowly, cautiously. After Noah's birthday party, Elaine had continued her therapy and made consistent efforts to be a positive presence in our lives. Small gestures at first, sending Noah articles about science topics he loved, dropping off homemade cookies, offering to pick him up from school when I had to work late. Gradually, these grew into more meaningful interactions, attending his school play, helping him with a history project, having genuine conversations that didn't revolve around her own life. I texted back, games at 10 a.m. Noah would love to see you there. My mother remained on the periphery of our lives. She had never directly apologized, but 6 months after the wedding, she had shown up at our door with a tentative peace offering, a photo album filled with pictures of me as a child, many I had never seen before. I thought Noah might like to see these, she'd said stiffly. To know where he comes from on your side. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement of Noah as family, as part of our lineage. We had allowed her brief, supervised visits since then. She was trying, in her own limited way, to be better. Whether that effort would ever bloom into a genuine relationship remained to be seen, but the door was cracked open, if not fully ajar. Uncle Robert and his wife had become fixtures in our lives, providing the unconditional support I had never experienced from my own parents. Robert often told stories about my father that helped Noah feel connected to the grandfather he had never met. You have his laugh, Robert would tell Noah. And his curiosity about how things work. These connections to the past had helped Noah build a stronger sense of identity. No longer the fatherless child his aunt and grandmother had cruelly labeled him, he now understood himself as part of a rich tapestry of family, some related by blood, some by choice, all contributing to who he was becoming. As for me, I had undergone my own transformation. The long-held defensiveness that had characterized my interactions with my family had gradually softened. I had started therapy too, working through the years of criticism and disapproval that had shaped my own self-image. I learned to set boundaries without building walls, to forgive without forgetting, to move forward without erasing the past. I had also returned to school, pursuing the nursing degree I had abandoned when I became pregnant with Noah. James had supported this decision, adjusting his schedule to take Noah on the evenings I had classes. Elaine had surprised me by offering to help with tuition, a gesture I had initially refused but eventually accepted when I understood it was her way of making amends. Mom. Dad. Look how high it is. Noah called, his face tilted toward the sky where the kite danced on air currents. I raised my hand to shield my eyes from the sun, watching my son, his body vibrating with excitement, his face unguarded and joyful. There was no trace now of the wounded child who had taken the microphone at his aunt's wedding. That moment had transformed him just as it had transformed all of us. James jogged over and sat beside me on the bench, both of us watching Noah expertly manipulate the kite strings. He's something else, James said, echoing words I had said many times. He is, I agreed. You know, James said, his gaze still on Noah, I think about that wedding every day. How different my life would be if he hadn't found those letters, if he hadn't been brave enough to reach out to me. He gets that from you, you know, I said. That courage. I was never that bold. James looked surprised. Are you kidding? You raised him alone for 9 years. You protected him from everything, including me. That took incredible courage. I smiled at the compliment, accepting it in a way I never could have before. Maybe he gets it from both of us. We sat in comfortable silence, watching our son command the sky with a string and paper. Despite everything, the hurt, the rejection, the years of separation, we had arrived at this moment of peace. Not through bitterness or vengeance, but through truth and reconciliation. The wedding that had begun as a day of humiliation had become a catalyst for healing. Noah's brave act, taking that microphone, revealing his father's presence, standing in his truth, had rippled through all our lives, washing away old patterns and creating space for new beginnings. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in watercolor hues of pink and gold, Noah reeled in his kite and ran toward us, his face flushed with exertion and happiness. "Best day ever," he declared, collapsing on the grass at our feet. Looking at his shining face, at the man beside me who had found his way back to fatherhood, at the life we had built from the ashes of old pain, I couldn't help but agree. "Yes," I said. "It really is."